The fight over who ultimately controls the House of Representatives next year is now playing out here in the Deep South. This isn't just about the partisan power plays that we've seen in other big states. Down here, it's also about the decades-long fight over who ultimately represents mostly black communities. Figures represents most of Montgomery, Alabama, the birthplace of the modern civil rights movement. Alabama Republicans, like Attorney General Steve Marshall, want the Supreme Court to reverse previous federal court rulings requiring his state to create 2 districts with mostly black voters. Unlike the new maps drawn in other states after President Trump asked Texas to come up with more Republican seats, Alabama, plus Tennessee and Louisiana, are now moving quickly in response to last week's Supreme Court ruling that narrowed the Voting Rights Act. So now, any state can redraw boundaries with less accounting for race.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into another episode of Ron's coverage. Now today, we're going to talk about the recent Supreme Court decision that was made on April 29th, 2026, and their ruling about rolling back the second provision of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that prevents state governments to draw congressional district maps based on race. In the wake of that Supreme Court decision, numerous states such as Virginia, Texas, Florida, Mississippi, which is Republican states, has planned to redraw their redistricting maps so they have an advantage in the midterms later this year. Now, Virginia has already redrawn their congressional district maps, which is predominantly Democrat. It was more balanced with Republicans since Virginia is pretty much a purple state. But now with the newly elected governor, Abigail Spanberger, along with the Senate president, has redrawn their congressional district maps. It was struck down by the Virginia Supreme Court, claiming that it violated their state constitution. South Carolina legislator just recently approved a resolution that enables them to gerrymander their maps. Alabama too, as mentioned earlier in this video, the Supreme Court has reinstated Texas congressional district maps that they're redrawn. So Democrats has bit off more than they can chew once again. Now, a lot of other southern states that I mentioned, like Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee included, they just recently passed a law gerrymandering their state. And Louisiana is going to redraw their congressional district map.
Immediately after that Supreme Court decision last week, which made it much harder to challenge alleged racially gerrymandered congressional maps, we've seen a number of states make moves in their own territories. Let's take a quick look at the map here. Louisiana quickly suspended its House primaries, where early voting was already underway, so lawmakers could approve new maps there. And
speaking of Louisiana, from the case of Robinson versus Louisiana back in 2022, Supreme Court originally ruled in favor of Louisiana redrawing their congressional district map based on race, but it was challenged by other voting blocs to make an appeal. That's what led to the ruling on April 29th of this year. Democrats, as always, trying to push the envelope because they want to appeal to a far left extremist base, and it is backfiring on them. And the Democrats' argument is, oh, this going to dilute the black vote.
Effectively, it means it's now going to be harder to bring any lawsuits claiming that gerrymandering discriminates along racial lines unless there is proof of that intent. Why do you call that a defeat for American democracy?
Margaret, let's be clear. What happened this week is nothing less than a massive and devastating blow, not only to our democracy, but particularly to people of color in the South. This question about intent is on its head misleading, and it ignores our history. We had 100 years after the 15th Amendment was passed, which on paper gave black people the right to vote, but with supposedly or putatively race-neutral methods for 100 years, the right to vote was denied. But in more recent history, the Supreme Court, this same conservative Supreme Court, hobbled Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act in 2013 with Shelby versus Holder. Since then, we've seen the racial turnout gap get wider and wider, not smaller. And it has grown twice as fast in the states that used to be under Section 5. We will see a devastating impact as a result of this. And now more than ever, we've got to stand up and fight for our democracy.
The Supreme Court ruling may impact the black vote because a lot of these congressional district maps was based on race. Yeah, it may dilute the black vote as a whole. Blacks mostly vote for Democrats at an 85 to 90% clip. One question us black people should ask ourselves in the wake of this ruling: why do we keep on attempting to get validation from white folks, rather it's Democrat or Republican? Both of these parties are managed and operated by white folks. So why are we seeking approval from them? A lot of black liberals like to say, oh, if you're a conservative, you're a sellout. But you're spewing propaganda on behalf of Democrats. So it looks like both liberals and conservatives are tap dancing for the white man, if that's the case, according to their argument. What I'm saying for black folks is, why we keep trying to gain approval from the white man instead of building our own system? Why not build and stop trying to gain approval from the white man? Black liberals always like to complain about racism or whatnot. Not saying that racism don't exist, but the point is they keep trying to seek approval from the white man. Who's the real sellout here if you try and gain their approval? Instead of trying to beg for a seat at the table, why not build your own table? It's like trying to seek approval from the popular kids in school that don't want you in their crew. Why try to get a seat at the table with a group of people that don't want you at that table? It makes things more difficult for you, if you ask me. I don't know about y'all, but I don't want to stay somewhere where I'm not wanted. Of course, we do that at jobs all the time. That's for a payment incentive. But in this case, in the political sense, why try to seek approval from someone that you claim looks down upon you? That's the whole gist of my argument. Anyway, numerous states is going to gerrymander their states, and both Democrats and Republicans do this all the time. And in the Republicans' defense, the blue states in the Northeast were already gerrymandered to begin with.
It's no different than what you see in New England, for example, having a whole slate of Democratic representatives.
California already gerrymandered too as well. And Gavin Newsom attempted to re-gerrymander earlier this year or last year or so. Democrats been already gerrymandered their states, and now Republicans is turning the tables on them and Republican-led states in the South. That will conclude my video. If you like this video, hit like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share Ron's coverage. I will catch y'all in my next video. Peace.